A teenage girl vanishes in broad daylight.
They said, well, don't worry about it. 19-year-olds run away all the time. They come back soon.
What convinced her family that she was in trouble?
Shannon was not the kind of girl that would just run away.
A chilling call confirmed their worst fears.
They had some kind of memento of her that they were going to leave to sort of show that they were credible.
Why were investigators so frustrated?
There was just nothing that would lead to an arrest.
Would they ever find out the truth behind what happened to Shannon?
There was no DNA, there was no crime scene, there was no body.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to Atlanta, Georgia. The city became the backdrop of a terrifying mystery when a college student vanished while on a break from her part-time job. Investigators hoped that a tip from the most shocking of sources would be the key to finding the missing student. It was early morning on Saturday, March 26th. Instead of sleeping in like most college kids her age, 19-year-old Shannon Melendi was awake and getting ready for a long day at work.
She was a student at Emory University, and she was working part-time at the softball country club, which was a large complex where generally adult softball teams would play in kind of central DeKalb County.
The club was hosting a softball tournament that day. Shannon arrived on the field at 8:45 a.m.
She was keeping score for the various teams there, and she had planned only to work one shift, but somebody called in sick, and so she said, okay, I'll work it, and she worked the second one.
When the first game ended around noon, Shannon said she was thirsty and was going to quickly run out before the next game began.
She went over across the street to get a soft drink at a gas station, and that's the last anyone ever saw of her.
Shannon's boss was annoyed when she didn't come back, but was too busy with the tournament to give it much thought. But later that night, when Shannon didn't show up to her dorm, her roommate and friend, Athena, began to worry.
Well, her roommate, when she didn't come home that night, knew something was wrong.
Athena tried to stay calm, but as the hours passed with no sign of Shannon, she began to panic. By early afternoon the next day, she decided to go looking for her.
And so she contacted friends, and she rode around looking for any sign, and actually found Shannon's car at the gas station across from the softball compound.
The car was unlocked and the keys were in the ignition. Shannon's friends all agreed that they needed to call the police.
They knew that something was wrong. She had a very nice new car that she was very proud of. She wouldn't have just left it there for somebody to steal.
But when officers arrived at the gas station, they seemed a lot less concerned than Shannon's friends had been.
They said, well, don't worry about it. 19-year-olds run away all the time. They come back soon.
One of the officers took a quick peek inside the car, but didn't find anything obvious that suggested a crime had taken place.
They didn't process it like they would have had they known she was a missing person, do things like fingerprints and tape lifts and DNA and stuff like that.
In fact, they did the opposite. The officers told Shannon's roommate to drive the car back to campus, which then contaminated any evidence that might have existed. Police were convinced Shannon had simply run off with friends and would be back.
When you've got an adult who just doesn't come home, for a night, that doesn't always raise a lot of red flags for law enforcement officers.
But it did raise red flags for Shannon's parents, who became worried sick when Athena called to let them know what was going on. What did Shannon's parents do when they heard their daughter was missing?
Well, they immediately got on a plane and flew to Atlanta. They knew that something was wrong. Shannon was not the kind of girl that would just run away or go on a hiatus. She was in touch with her family all the time. She was very close to them and her friends.
When Shannon's parents arrived in Atlanta, they filed a missing persons report and insisted she would never run away.
That she would just up and disappear was the last thing that anybody thought who knew her especially because of her plans for the future.
19-year-old Shannon had always been an overachiever. She was president of her class in high school and had graduated with honors. She went to Emory to pursue a law degree with the ultimate goal of one day becoming a Supreme Court justice.
She had been working while she was in school at the Carter Center in Atlanta that was founded by President Jimmy Carter. And so she was a person who was on the way to making a mark in the world.
Shannon's family felt as if the police weren't taking her disappearance seriously and decided to take matters into their own hands. Shannon's father, Louis Melendi, who was a famous celebrity photographer, even enlisted the help of some of his A-list clients.
He had some of his photographic clients do PSAs. They put up billboards. It was just a full court press by the family that finally drew the attention of the FBI.
With the FBI now on board, the investigation into Shannon's disappearance became a top priority, and the race was on to find out exactly what had happened to her.
There was one possible lead.
They had some kind of memento of her that they were going to leave to sort of show that they were credible.
Shannon Melendi had vanished in broad daylight, and no one knew why. Investigators learned she had taken a trip for spring break in the weeks before her disappearance.
Friends told the police that there was one possible lead, a man named Chris, who she met on spring break in Florida.
Detectives wondered if they had somehow reunited and run off together. It seemed possible, but when they tracked Chris down, Shannon wasn't with him.
They interviewed the individual and also friends of that individual, and it became clear that he had a good alibi for the time frame, and he was discarded as a suspect.
Investigators then tried to retrace Shannon's last known steps and found themselves back at the softball field where she was working part-time as a scorekeeper.
You could talk to people at the place she was last known to be, which was at the softball country club, and see if people saw her leave or talked to her or said anything about what her plans would be.
Detectives were able to track down everyone who was at the tournament that day. Witness after witness told them the same story.
Several people mentioned that they noticed that the umpire had been distracted by Melendi, who was on the field keeping score, and that it had affected some calls that he had made.
The umpire was 33-year-old Colvin Hinton. He went by the name Butch.
Butch Hinton was, by all accounts, a solid citizen, if you will. He worked at Delta Airlines as a mechanic. He was married. He had children. He owned a home. He even taught Sunday school.
When questioned by investigators, Butch admitted that he had spoken with Shannon, but said he didn't see her after the game because he went straight home to make a phone call.
One of the first things you do is you try to create a timeline of when things happen. So, somebody gets here at this time and leaves here at this time, and anybody that may be involved, you try to get them in a timeline.
Hinton did offer an alibi for the time that Shannon went missing. He said, "I went home and I talked to friends on the phone."
Phone records showed Butch had in fact made a call from his home like he said he did. The time frame would have given him only a short window to have done something to Shannon. Investigators had to move on. There was nothing to tie Butch Hinton to Shannon, and no solid evidence that a crime had even been committed. But everything changed when Emory University's counseling center received an anonymous call.
On April 6th, there was a call placed by someone who wouldn't leave their name or information, saying that they had abducted Shannon Melendi and that they could prove it.
The man insisted that Shannon was alive and well, and that he would call back with a ransom request.
The person said that they had a ring or they had some kind of memento of her that they were going to leave to sort of show that they were credible.
The FBI traced the call to a payphone 20 miles away. There, they discovered a small cloth bag. Inside was a ring wrapped in masking tape that belonged to Shannon.
It just seemed like that was a real lead.
It was now clear to detectives that what Shannon's parents felt and knew all along was right. Shannon Melendi wasn't just missing, she had been abducted.
It just went quiet, and investigators were extremely frustrated. There was just nothing that would lead to an arrest.
Shannon Melendi's distraught parents sat by the phone waiting for the kidnapper to make his next move.
They were expecting to hear from a kidnapper at some point. They felt like that this was something that they could handle because they had somebody who seemed to have a profit motive involved.
But the ransom call never came, and the hope of finding Shannon alive quickly began to fade.
No more calls were received. It just went quiet, and investigators were extremely frustrated.
With the case stalling, detectives went back to the one lead they had: softball umpire Butch Hinton.
At some point, the police executed a search warrant, and they searched the house, but they were not able to recover any evidence that really tied Shannon Melendi to the scene, or tied him to Shannon Melendi.
They did believe that he might be a suspect still, so he was never discounted, but there was just nothing that would lead to an arrest.
It kind of goes cold.
The Shannon Melendi case went cold, but it wasn't the last time investigators would hear the name Butch Hinton. Just 6 months later, police were at his home for an unrelated incident.
There was a fire at his home. He said it started upstairs with a household appliance.
He blamed it on a vacuum cleaner or something like that.
Hinton filed an insurance claim for the damage to his house.
Arson investigators determined that it was intentional, and so Hinton was arrested for arson and insurance fraud.
While investigating the arson case, Hinton's neighbor came forward with a chilling detail about the day Shannon disappeared.
On that particular night, they remembered that Hinton had started a large bonfire in his backyard.
Investigators searched the property again, this time using a backhoe to excavate the fire pit. Did they find any evidence?
They were not able to find any human remains, certainly not anything that related and traced back to Shannon.
Even though there was no hard evidence of murder, there were other items collected during the search. Police found wire ties, plastic pants, and 9 rolls of masking tape. None of it was enough to arrest Hinton for murder, but he was sentenced to 9 years for the arson and fraud case. This gave investigators time to work on the murder case against him, and they learned something shocking.
He had a criminal history that involved a previous kidnapping and holding somebody in his basement, and that had happened years before in another state.
It happened in Illinois when Hinton was married to his first wife. Police say he had kidnapped a 14-year-old girl, and his wife had walked in while he was assaulting her.
He pled guilty, but pled insanity. He was sentenced to 6 years. I think he only ended up serving about 2, and that had not originally been known in the investigation.
As Hinton's release date grew closer, investigators knew they needed to find a way to keep him off the streets.
The DA in DeKalb County and the police there decided to take another deep dive into this case.
They had every piece of evidence re-examined, starting with the bag that contained Shannon's ring. The bag was unique, and police learned that it had been manufactured for only one customer, Delta Airlines.
Hinton worked at Delta. The bag that the ring was in was one that was used by Delta Airlines to store small parts, and so there was that connection.
Butch Hinton worked for Delta as a mechanic and had direct access to those bags. And there was more. As they looked at the masking tape that Shannon's ring had been wrapped with, they remembered the rolls of tape they found in Hinton's garage.
They did attempt to match the tape that they found to the tape that was on the ring. It was the same type of tape.
And a closer look at the masking tape around the ring revealed tiny metallic particles There turned out to be traces of copper-nickel alloy, only found in the aviation industry.
And so they were pretty sure that that tape had sometime been in the Delta workplace where Hinton worked. And that was the tie that they made to Hinton, was through his workplace and through that relatively unusual kind of metal alloy that would not be commonly found outside of the airline industry.
With the new evidence tying Butch Hinton to Shannon Melendi, prosecutors felt as if they finally had enough to charge him with first-degree murder. More than 10 years after Shannon Melendi vanished, Butch Hinton went on trial for her murder. Prosecutors knew proving the case wouldn't be easy.
It was completely circumstantial. There was no DNA, there was no crime scene, there was no body.
How hard is it to try a case with no body?
It's quite difficult, and you throw on that the fact that you're doing it years later, when witnesses tend to go away and die, and people's memory gets bad, and evidence has a tendency to get misplaced or lost. It can be very difficult.
The prosecution believed that Hinton followed Shannon after the game, where he grabbed her, took her to his home, and then made the phone call to establish an alibi. Prosecutors believed he then assaulted and killed her. He kept her ring, and after being questioned by police, made the anonymous call to turn the attention away from him. Based on the evidence and his past criminal history, it didn't take long for a jury to find him guilty.
He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Shannon Melendi. And about 6 months after he was in prison, and after the Georgia Supreme Court had determined that he would not have an appeal, he did confess to abducting, killing, and burning the body of Shannon Melendi.
Shannon's body was never found, and her murder still haunts so many.
A young girl with so much potential, so much life, so many friends, such a close tie to her family, and a future that by any standard would have more than likely ended up as a major contribution. And to have that taken away, I'm sure that family will never be able to accept that.
Since the murder happened before Florida's life without parole rule, the judge had to allow the possibility of parole in Hinton's sentence. Shannon's family has vowed to be at every hearing to hopefully make sure he never gets out of prison. And now it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. Situational awareness is a tool you can use to help maximize your safety both at day and night. It's crucial to stay alert and aware of your surroundings at all times and have a plan in place for various scenarios in the event of danger. Predators often attack when a victim is alone and vulnerable, so when in public, use the buddy system whenever possible. You may also want to consider taking self-defense classes or carrying a personal safety device for additional protection. And finally, always trust your instincts. If something or someone makes you feel uncomfortable, move quickly to a safe location and seek help from law enforcement. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.